Hey guys, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we're actually going to be talking about the internet, or lack thereof. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because Pew Research, once again, did their homework, and we have some very fascinating numbers about those who simply don't use the internet. Now, this focuses on America, but I think it's absolutely fascinating. We obviously use the internet for absolutely everything, whether it's business, which is one of the primary drivers of the internet, and I don't know how you couldn't run a business in this day and age without the internet, to connecting with friends, family on places like social media. We shop online. We look up information. If you ever have a dispute with someone, you're Googling it to figure out which one of you was right. And so the internet is very pervasive in our culture and in our society. And since 2000, Pew has actually been looking at how technology has impacted society and basically social things, within the United States and also around the world. Now, this is what they found for the year 2019 thus far. 10% of adults don't use the internet in America. 10%. Now, there are a lot of driving factors behind this. First one being age, and we'll get to that because I think that one's an obvious one. But some of the other things are educational attainment, household income and community type, and a couple of other driving factors. But those are the big ones that we're going to be diving into just a little bit here. Now, to go with age, I think it's rather obvious that seniors are those that adopt the internet the least. Now, if you're over 65, you might be one of the 27% of people 65 and older that simply don't use the internet. Now, I think that's kind of interesting, because my mother is in that age and she uses it to communicate with myself and her grandkids and et cetera, but here we are. Now, that's interesting though, because we have a decreasing percentage of that. Now, in 2019, we have 27% of seniors over 65, that don't use this. That was 7 points higher last year. So we are making progress in terms of internet adoption for those that are seniors. Moving on, let's talk about household income and education for a moment. These are huge factors. So 29% of adults with less than a high school education don't use the internet. Now, this also is an improving statistic because it was 35% in 2018, but literally that's almost 1/3 of all adults that have less than a high school education that simply don't use the internet. Now, adults from households, looking at the economics, adults from households earning $30,000 or less are far more likely to not be using the internet compared to, let's say, more affluent adults. And we are looking at literally 18% of adults that are in households that have incomes of less than 30,000 not using the internet versus 2% for everybody else above that. So that is a massive gap. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, and this is my own analysis based on Pew's research, and I'm happy to link this to anybody that's interested, is basically the internet has the ability to offer advantage to those who use it. Now, think about this, and I've taken notes of my own thoughts here because I want to be straight. If you're, let's say, around the poverty line, you have actually a better chance of improving your economic status by using the internet. I think that makes sense. This means that people that are economically disadvantaged, they just can't stay ahead. And the problem that we have is that while this applies to adults, we also have to look at the children. If we're in an area that is economically disadvantaged and we have kids in that area, then they're going to have, let's say, lack of access to better educational tools. As they grow up, if they're not able to use the internet because, again, economics, they're not going to be able to find jobs outside of their region. Those are posted online. And they may not be able to find better jobs because they can't go to places like Indeed or LinkedIn or Monster. Take your pick of the job board site. And so that's a very serious issue. Now, we have been combating this in ways that the federal government has required that if you are at a certain socioeconomic status, major internet service providers are supposed to offer you basic bandwidth for basically dirt cheap. You have to apply for it, you have to be approved for it, but they have the ability to give that to you. And obviously, one of the largest demographics of economically disadvantaged people that are not using the internet are in rural areas. That is also a problem, primarily because a lot of these internet service providers simply don't want to lay the cable, for that one person that lives 10 miles out that way, even though they are responsible in that way, shape, or form if the person applies. And so I think it's going to be interesting, and what may be the game changer for economically disadvantaged people, especially those in rural areas, which is a large percentage of this. And again, I will link the Pew Research here. I think it's absolutely fascinating. Is 5G wireless. We are going to have an infrastructure that is continuously expanding over the next decade for 5G. And in the beginning, it's slowly ramping up, but that may actually fix the issue. And when we are looking at providing the internet, not just as a luxury for people to have, but an actual utility, an actual service, which is one of the things that the whole net neutrality thing is based on, this becomes the argument to say, well, this has to be it. In the same way that the telephone decades ago, basically anybody could get, and you should, because if you don't have a telephone, how can you communicate with the outside world? How can you call for emergency help? How can you keep up with your friends? That has morphed into the internet. And so here we are. And so we're going to see where this goes, but I thought that was absolutely fascinating that, in a country of 330 million, we've got about 33 million people out there that simply don't use the internet. And quite frankly, they're not watching me here, so we can say anything about them that we want to. Not that I would say anything bad, but I think it's important to get those people online in a very safe and secure way, primarily for their own economic benefit and hopefully for their communication benefit as well. So that is my 2 cents. I'd love to know what you think. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, guys.